The reality is that nature follows patterns, not hard and fast rules. Of course, there are basic rules, but even those are just ways that we humans have chosen to categorize and classify what we can observe in order to assert some degree of control. But nature seems largely to transcend our rules. For example, plant spacing. We're conditioned to check the seed packet to find ideal plant spacing, and this can be really helpful for getting a baseline for home gardeners. But we really don't see that kind of specific spacing in nature. Nature tends to grow plants in irregular clusters. Another rule that gets slapped on home gardeners often is this idea that plants need specific nutrients in specific doses as though they're babies on a feeding schedule. But nature follows this pattern that we already looked at in the first lesson of nutrient cycling. It gives and it receives back in a natural cyclical pattern. Watering is an interesting rule that seems to have a lot of gardeners confused. I've certainly been confused. There's sort of this idea that we need to be maybe watering our plants every few hours to keep them alive. But in nature, rainfall and water availability come more in pulses and cycles. There's really no such thing as a watering schedule. It's more like the rainy season and the dry season. Now I'll qualify what I'm saying here because while no rules gardening is a thing, it isn't always realistic for everyone. You probably shouldn't leave rotting animal carcasses across the floor of your food forest in an attempt to be more like nature. And this is where we get to the intersection of nature and gardening. Anytime that we deliberately grow a plant, we're engaging with natural processes and artificial ones. Nature doesn't hand plant seeds. It doesn't protect some plants from pest damage and leave others alone to get munched. Gardening, or any form of agriculture, is a result of technological advancements and plant domestication at some level. In other words, it's not fully natural. The problem is that on that spectrum between the natural and the artificial, our modern systems have led us closer to the artificial than the natural in a lot of ways. And that means that big companies can make bold claims about specific rules that you need to follow so that they can sell you products that help you follow the rules that they created. I've said in other videos that the goal for this channel is not to give you fully copy-paste techniques. It's to actually empower you to try things that apply to your context under your specific conditions. And the same goes with observing nature's patterns. I don't think that we really want to copy-paste every single thing that we see in nature into our gardens. So maybe we can observe the pattern from nature that trees self-mulch by dropping their leaves and leaving them there. Rather than never raking your leaves up in our yard, perhaps we could observe the pattern of mulching and apply it. Maybe that means layering the leaves, but it could also mean collecting the leaves, composting them, and then reapplying them as more microbially and nutritionally diverse mulch. There's a high degree of contextualization needed for any pattern that we see. But that's why it's so helpful that nature follows patterns, not rules, because whereas rules need to be adopted, patterns can be adapted.